What's good, people? You know, a lot of times when I be reading comments and things like that, and I do read these comments. I mean, most of them are dumb, but of course, there's a couple of them that are very insightful and very interesting. They respond to what I say. And even when they don't agree with me, they may put it in a way that's interesting where I kind of go, oh, okay, I see where you're coming from, or let me clarify my position, right? And I realize that a lot of times I always reference the word bangers. I'm always saying, hey, this is not a banger. This is a banger. And I think that's confusing to some people. So I'm going to try to explain this because some of me thinks to a certain degree that maybe this is a little of my era and certain things that I experienced that maybe the younger, particularly the younger ones of you, didn't necessarily experience. So it might be a little bit harder to understand where I'm coming from. Whereas for me, I'm just like, oh, this is like common sense. Like, this is clearly a banger. This is not a banger. Like, it's just so obvious to me, but it might not be obvious to you. And so let me get into what I mean by a banger. A banger to me is a record that has energy, is a hip hop song that has energy that hip hop fans love. Not pop fans, hip hop fans. Now, let me explain this because it is actually a lot more complex than one might think. And let me take it back to the very, very beginning with this hip hop shit. Pop and hip hop to me are not the same thing. They really are not, right? Hip hop has become pop. And I think that's why it gets confusing. But, if you go back, it's a little bit clearer and easier to see the difference. Pop records are always going to be more popular than hip hop records, just by the very nature of what they are. Pop music is for the masses, it's less threatening, the beats are not as hard, the ideas are simpler, they're less intellectual. They're also a little bit more sort of like cater to everybody. And they sort of in their best ways, they let everyone in. Whereas hip hop is very much like, nah, like you need to understand this hip hop shit before you can even grasp the song. Because a lot of times, like if you don't understand hip hop, the shit is gonna sound like noise to you. And that's deliberate. Hip hop is beautiful noise in a lot of ways. In fact, when hip hop started to really become that shit, where it was like it wasn't just a sample of like some old R&B record or whatever, but people started to manipulate shit like, Primo taking what people thought were water droplets and making that into a beat. That's when hip hop really went to another level creatively because it's almost like, yo, you are literally manipulating noise. You're manipulating sounds in my environment that aren't even music and you're making it musical. Like, holy shit. That's hip hop. Anyway, I digress. Let's get into the difference. Pop is always more popular than hip hop. This is true. I think it's always been true. Let's look at Rapper's Delight. Rapper's Delight is a perfect example. When Rapper's Delight came out, you might know the story that Grandmaster Caz had his rhyme stolen, right? And by Big Bang Hank and a bunch of guys. And so Big Bang Hank and Big Bank Hank. Sorry, let me get that name right. That's a stupid ass name. Anyway, um, so he gets the rhyme, whatever. He records it for Sylvia Robertson, and they take the good times, good times. They replay it in the studio, and it becomes this like worldwide sensation, right? It goes charts something crazy, right? And they're performing it everywhere. Okay, that song is pop. People in the 70s at that time did not fuck with that record. Hip hop fans. Because it was soft. If you listen to Rapper's Delight, it's soft. Like the snare is soft. It doesn't really have that that energy that Grandmaster Caz has had, right? The Park Jam shit. And even Grandmaster Caz is kind of like, what is this soft shit? Like, it sounds soft. And if you listen to the Caz version has that extra, it has this like kick that comes in every time. It's harder. Hip hop songs, by their very nature, are harder, right? And I think this is where people get it wrong. They get it twisted. They don't quite understand that hip hop is a very energetic and groove based art form, okay? And they kind of look at it and say, oh, well, it's all getting played, it's all pop, or it's all like in the club, but it's not about that. It's about the energy behind the record, the the attitude, right? And attitude is something that in general is not that popular. Part two coming.